As the Seven took charge to the imagined order, Sloane and her army have finally been erased from the island. But this is Fortnite, as if we're ever gonna get a break. In this season's new release of the official cinematic trailer, everything looked fun, happy and chill and nice, until we saw her. Like, come on, we thought we'd be able to enjoy something in life. Oh well, I guess that's over. She's watching us and I'm gonna figure out why. Immediately when I saw her, I thought, is she watching us? Is she made of plants? Or is this just a Count Dracula collab? Then I came to some conclusion that calling her the Observer was a cool idea. Now I realize how boring the word observer is, but it sums her up pretty well. She's watching over us, and immediately, this artifact from the Batman x Fortnite 0 Point comics came right to my head. This is 100% the answer. No one can tell me otherwise, and just let me explain. Look at this. You can see 2 people, 5 other things, and 1 big orb. Now, to give you better context of the image below, we need to take a quick look into the text on the page. So let's do that. Batman says, given the time you've had and the limited geography, I expect you've explored the island quite thoroughly. Renegade replies by saying, yeah, and I've found some very interesting stuff. This looks quite old, and I'm not sure if the images represent some kind of religion or what, but it looks like people being taken from elsewhere and being brought here by those godlike figures, whoever they are. Okay, so what we get out of that piece of dialogue is that the circly, swirly looking thing in the middle right here is actually Reality Zero, or the island flip, you know, this thing, right? The thing you see when you open the game. The 5 decently abstract drawings around it are people being like brought into Reality Zero, right? And the 2 people on the outside of the whole thing and the situation is what Renegade likes to call the godlike figures. Now, let's break this down. First of all, I think it's quite important that we know who the godlike figures even are. It's the Observer, the Plants Lady, or whatever you want to call her, and Geno himself. Yeah, it's actually that simple. I remember a line of Foundation in some comics that said something like, the 0 Point is in the hands of Geno, or something like that. He also says in the event dialogue that Geno has always been the one causing destruction and everything. Just take a listen.
Total destruction thing just doesn't feel like Sloane to me. She does whatever it takes to win, but she's not a monster.
Sloane's never been in charge.
Hold on. Do you seriously mean that
Geno. It's always been Geno.
I find that super interesting, because if the artifact is super old as Renegade says, and Geno is also very old, like he's always controlled everything, he's possibly like an immortal guy, right? He's always been around, well, that gives like a pretty good idea that he is a godlike figure. He's immortal, controls everything. Doesn't that make sense? Yeah. From what I can tell, he's a godlike figure. And as for the Observer, it's basically just due to her placement and her role in reality. From what we can tell, she's almost outside of like the whole omniverse itself. Not just our reality, or just a glimpse of our reality. Literally, like, living people are doing active things inside of her hands. So, her placement watching over our reality as a god most definitely makes sense. She's controlling everything, and she can do anything. Like, does that not sound like a god to you? Okay, so now, who are the people trapped around the edges of this Reality Zero circly looking thing? Well, in my opinion, they're actually the Elemental Kings, and if you don't know who they are, allow me to explain my confusing, complicated lore, but I tried to make it as simple as I possibly could. The Elemental Kings or Queens are the Fortnite storyline figures such as Ice King, Fire King, and 3 other unknown characters, but I've actually solved who they are. There are also Ice Queens and Kings and Monarchs of both genders, yet only one member of the element is present as its main representative at this table of monarchs. For example, Cube Queen is more in power than Cube King, so she would be the main one to represent the cubes, which brings me to my next point. Cube Queen is actually an elemental. How do we know this? Well, she actually has the set of powers of an elemental, and so does the Foundation. How do we know that? Well, they all hopped into this big bubble of their own element, they got really damn big from it, and they were able to embrace the energy within just for their own good and power. I mean, Foundation did it for good, Ice King not so much, and same as Cube Queen. They all have their own reasoning, but you can see, it all looks very similar. Also, on the Sanctuary walls, which if you don't know is the main base of the 7 on the island, images of elemental symbols mixed with the 7 are present, and one of them is a life symbol, showing that the 7 is mixed in with the elementals. We know Origin is Cube Queen, Foundation is likely the Light / like 0 Point King. And that brings me to my final symbol here. You see the life one, it's actually not linked to the 7, and we don't really know of a life king, so that actually explains who the final person, the missing person out of the 5 people are. On the back of this elemental stone, Oro's sun looking symbol is displayed pretty clearly. The life symbol, which we just talked about, is also visible on Oro's female counterpart's head, Aurelia, showing that either Oro or Aurelia are life elementals, and I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, 3 elementals have the same descriptions, nice hiding. Oro also has this present in some of his challenges, take the element out of their element. What could that possibly mean other than the elementals? So now that's pretty obvious that the Cube Queen, Oro, Ice King, Fire King, and maybe Foundation are the elementals. Anyways, in the Cube Queen's song, she sings about how all of Reality Zero is kind of just a game that she took part in bringing us towards. And now it all makes sense. According to all of the elements, Geno and the Observer brought the elementals to the island, as we can see here, to sort of do all the work for them. I mean, they gather loopers, the elementals sort of just sit back. Sorry, the elementals gather loopers while the Observers just kind of sit back. And that explains why Cube Queen sings what she sings about how she brought us to the loop, why the Observer just watches over us, why Geno has been controlling us for so long, and why the IO seem very interested in the elementals. I mean, it's a huge part of their main crime scene investigation that's been around for I don't know, 5 seasons now? Basically, Geno and the Observer control stuff from the outside, the elementals bring in loopers, obviously before IO took over, and it all kind of works like that. Gods control stuff, bring in the loop, they're kind of just watching from the outside, letting everything be done for them. Pretty lazy, but I mean, they have all the power in the world. Why would they not abuse it? So, I hope that all makes sense for you all. That explains so much about this season's lore. I hope you enjoyed. If you did enjoy, or if you were a little bit confused about the whole elemental theory, there's literally an entire playlist here. Go watch it. It kind of is just me ranting a little bit. I tried to make it as a bit more simple in this video so you don't have to watch those other videos. But if you'd like to give me some views or subscribe, that'd be great. If you need some more explanations, go right there. It's right there for you. Have a good one, and enjoy the Fortnite lore.